right, welcome everyone to this episode of the Hawaii Retirement Show. We're going to be breaking down FERS distribution options. Jason, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing good. Ready to talk some furs.
That's awesome. And this episode is really just to be tying into our other FERS episodes. So if you haven't listened to some of those, go back. Maybe you're a federal employee or DoD employee. But yeah, today we're going to talk about distribution options available to you, some spousal things, and all that. So Jason, why don't you just kick us off with what is some of those elections?
Yeah, so the first distribution options we're talking about really revolve around survivor benefits for your pension there. So just to kick it off, there's several options that you can choose depending on your needs and what your spouse or significant other needs to allow your pension benefit, your FERS pension benefit, to continue on if you were to pass away. Um, the default is actually, if you're married when you retire, the default is to provide the maximum survivor benefit. So if you're going to choose anything less than the maximum survivor benefit, you just need the spouse consent, and that's pretty common with everything. The TSP has a lot of this too, where you actually have to have the spouse sign off on it. I guess they just don't want one spouse, making all the decisions, and then you kind of squeeze out the other spouse from getting any benefit at all.
Right.
Um, but what happens is if you elect to leave a survivor benefit to your spouse, um, they will deduct your benefit by a percentage in order to compensate. And we'll get into that right here. So, Paul, I'll just jump right in it and start us
Sounds
off.
good.
So the maximum survivor annuity, so the maximum you can leave to your spouse if you were to pass away from your FERS benefit, your FERS pension, would be 50% of the unreduced earned annuity. So let's say you're getting 3,000 a month, you pass away, your spouse will continue your benefit at 1,500 a month. Now, let's say your benefit was $3,000 a month and you elect this maximum survivor annuity. You're going to take a 10% reduction. So that's going to be $300 less. So now your benefit turns into 2,700 because you have this maximum survivor. So you 2,700 and your spouse is going to get half of the unreduced earned annuity, meaning they still get the 1,500 because it's the unreduced amount, but you're going to get the 2,700 while you're alive and receiving that benefit. Does that all make sense, Paul, there with the first one?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, one of the things, and I would imagine why this one's selected is because, the spouse would want to maintain some level of benefit, right? So it's a great option, great situation here. And typically, you would see this as a great planning opportunity, because if that was that, right, because that's a spouse passing away, then the reduction in benefit. So yeah, great option there. The next one is, you want to jump into the next one?
Sure. So there's kind of three main options here. You have the maximum, the partial, and the no survivor annuity, right? So we just did the maximum, 50%, 10% reduction. The next option is partial survivor annuity, which is you're going to take a 5% reduction instead of the 10% with the maximum, and your spouse is going to get a 25% of your unreduced benefit instead of the 50%. So pretty much take those first two numbers and cut them in half, the 10% reduction, 50% unreduced benefit, and now it's going to be 5% reduction on your benefit, and your spouse, if you pass away, gets 25% of your unreduced annuity, which is a great benefit too. And I think a lot of the planning for this goes into uh, a lot of health and longevity conversations here.
Yeah.
Um, I would think that if a spouse is kind of heading into retirement, maybe not in the best health, and the spouse is in really good health, I mean that just provides a lot more consideration for having that maximum benefit. And vice versa, right? If you're going into retirement, healthy as a horse, and you're ready to just have a lot of years ahead of you, and you know that, or you never know, but if you're planning, I'm going to live the longest time, then maybe it does make sense to do a partial or do a no survivor, right?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think again, like these are all planning opportunities, right? And these are selections that you make, right? And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure once you select them, there's like they're selected, right?
Yeah. And the hard part is you just never know what the future holds. That's with the tax planning as well. That's with a lot of things, right? I mean, there's a joke in the financial planning world. If you can tell us the exact, date of your death, then we can plan things out to a T, and
Yep.
you can flip your last penny on the way out, right? But the thing is, there's so much variability in what the future holds.
Yep.
You just got to make the best decision for you and your family on the information you have at hand.
100%.
Okay, so the last one, pretty straightforward. No survivor annuity. So you're going to get if you retire, you and your spouse, you're just going to take your full annuity pension, no reduction. If you pass away, your spouse, your annuity benefit just goes away.
Yep.
Um, if you're single, this is what you have, right? You just an unreduced benefit. And again, like I said, to start this off, you do need spousal consent um, to elect
Yep.
these things here.
Yep. Yeah, and obviously this one, more than likely not a single person, or maybe there's, known health issues with the spouse that, having a survivor benefit doesn't seem reasonable. You're more likely going to outlive that spouse. So again, we don't know those things, but these are all
Right,
things to consider when like or really the other option is maybe there's a great benefit on the other side, right? Maybe your
right,
spouse
right.
has a great benefit, and hey, you know what? This just makes sense mathematically for us. Let's go ahead and select that one.
Sure. Yeah, let's say you have somebody working at the in the federal system, the other spouse works in the state system, both have long careers, both have great pensions. You could both elect to have some sort of survivor, but you're both going to take a reduction, or you could just say, well, I know my spouse will be in a good place because they have their own, guaranteed secure income through their benefit. So I don't need to reduce mine, right? Another possible scenario.
Absolutely. I think that would be a very common one here, especially in Hawaii. Um,
Sure.
anything else that we need to think about when we think about these benefits?
Yeah, so there's a couple more that I'm just gonna kind of gloss over. So those are the main ones. There's something called insurable interest annuity. So I guess if you're not technically married to your partner or whatever it might be, if you can prove that there's an insurable interest, and I'm not sure what this would be, maybe it's a brother sister who lived together for a long time and they depend on each other. You have to show that there's financial dependence on the person with the FERS pension. And again, this is something I'm just going to gloss over. I don't know these rules. Talk to OPM, but there is an option where you can have an insurable interest where you can provide some sort of survivor benefit
Hmm.
to someone other than your spouse. There's also a former spouse survivor annuity. So this one too, I'm just going to gloss over. You could talk to OPM about the details here, but so this one says a former spouse survivor annuity within 2 years of divorce. So if it's a recently divorced spouse, you can still elect to offer them a survivor benefit of some sort, even though you're not married at the time of uh, retirement. Now, just because you have this option to elect them, there's still going to be the court process. You probably are going to owe them some sort of portion of your retirement anyway,
Yep.
but this is kind of like a voluntary, I want a survivor benefit for my former spouse who I'm recently divorced, and you can elect that here.
Yeah.
And
And
then sorry,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
Yeah.
No, no, go ahead.
Last one. There is an option for a survivor annuity for a new spouse. So let's say you're 5 years into retirement and you get married. There are some rules. Again, let's go to OPM and figure out what those are. But for a new spouse, you can elect some sort of survivor benefit as well if you remarry into your retirement.
Oh, interesting. That's a really cool thing to add there. Yeah. So I mean, with all these things, these are resources are available on the OPM website. You know, we're here to just kind of talk through them, educate through these, and to remind you guys again, like if there are any questions or you do have, you know, things to consider in these things, that's what we're here to we're here to answer. We're here to, or at least we're here to talk through, right? And that's why, you know, I love having these conversations, because these are things that I didn't know about, right, with the FERS system.
Sure.
So it's really cool. I appreciate that. So,
all right. Well, I think that wraps us up here for this FERS distribution survivor annuity episode. And yeah, like you said, if you have any questions you want us to talk about a little bit further, shoot us an email, and maybe we'll get to that on a Q&A episode.
The opinions and statements presented on this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Never make any investment or financial decisions based on information offered on this show without first consulting your financial, legal, or tax advisor. All economic and performance information mentioned on the show is historical in nature and is not indicative of any future results. All indices mentioned on this show are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Lastly, all opinions expressed by Jason Cutitta, Paul McWilliams, and any guests on the show are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of or are endorsed by ToBA Financial or Inspire Advisors. For Jason Cutitta, investment advisory services are offered through ToBA Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Hawaii and in other jurisdictions where exempt from registration. And for Paul McWilliams, investment advisory services are offered through Inspire Advisors LLC, a registered investment advisor with the SEC.